Well, another weekend, massive weekend in sport. So it's time for another Hot Air Sports podcast with myself, Micah, and my good mate Mahona. How are you this week, buddy?
I'm very good, mate. Very good. Oh, it's been a massive week in sport, hasn't it? A huge week. I mean, COVID's all around the world, but it just has knocked up the spread of sports. It's everywhere.
Quite right, quite right. And what about the mighty Leeds United?
Back up, mate. I thought you'd be toasting that. Very, very good news for the whole of the Premier League. I believe they're one of the biggest clubs in England, and they're back in the Premier League after 16 long years. Good on them.
Yeah. Yes, and West Brom are trying their best to miss out on automatic promotion, but Brentford slipped up on the weekend as well, so gave them a bit of a breathing space. So yeah, it's going to come down to the last game of the season to decide who gets that second automatic promotion spot between Brentford and West Brom. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of Baggies fans out there hoping that the West Brom can do the job.
Quite like to see Brentford in there, to be fair. They've been playing some amazing football. They haven't lost a game since the ball.
Well,
that last one
yesterday.
Last week. That's their first loss since lockdown. I think they'd won 7 in a row or something. So they're doing very, very well. So I'd like to see them get promoted. West Brom, take it or leave it. Well, they're one of those sides that I'm quite indifferent to, really. Don't really care about West Brom,
Me too. And the other big football news over the weekend is it's going to be an all-London FA Cup final. Shame those Manchester sides missed out, isn't it?
Let's all cry for Man United. Let's all cry for...
And
that was a surprise when Arsenal beat Man City. They basically did the same job on them that they did on us. So Mikel Arteta looks like he might be onto something there. They did very well. And then this morning, kind of a boring game, really. The lesser of two evils. Chelsea took on United, won 3-1, and they're through to the FA Cup final in front of absolutely no one, and does anyone really care? Exactly. What we do have to say is that next year, or well, actually it's this year, isn't it? Next season, the Charity Shield won't have Man City in it for the first time. It'll be Liverpool versus either Arsenal or Chelsea, which will be interesting.
Yeah. So that should be interesting, and of course it gives Arsenal an opportunity to play in Europe next year, because highly unlikely they were going to qualify through the Premier League, given their 8th or 9th in the league at the moment. So very unlikely they were going to qualify through that. With Chelsea looks seemingly set in the Champions League, thanks to Leicester losing this morning. And so Arsenal win the FA. You're in the Europa League.
Yeah, and then you've got bottom of the table in the Premier League, of course. I called them out ages ago. Bournemouth, 31 points. They've got one game left at Everton. They are minus 27. So the only way they can stay up is if Villa loses their final 2 games. They've got Arsenal and West Ham. They're on 31 points as well. So if they lose both those games and Bournemouth win, they will stay up, which is absolutely amazing. And I couldn't believe it. Watford sacked their manager this morning. 2 games to go. That is just such a strange call. They're on 34 points, but they've got to play Man City and Arsenal. They need probably a point to stay up. That's a crazy decision, mate. You're never safe as a manager, are you?
That's the second time that's happened to Nigel Pearson. That happened to him at Leicester the season before they won the league. They did the great escape and survived in the Premier League through the skin of their teeth. And Pearson got sacked at the end of that season. And it looks like the same thing's going to happen. Watford should survive. And, as you say, with Villa 2 games to go, if they can get 4 points in those 2 games, it's quite likely they'll stay up. So could be interesting. I think Bournemouth are done for now. As you say, they need to win their last game with a healthy goal margin as well. Chance of catching Watford, but it's a real dogfight down there.
Right.
And West Ham obviously is safe now. With Brighton in 16th on 37. So Yeah, it's all go. But yeah, as I mentioned, Leicester losing this morning gives United now a sniff of a chance to make the top four. And big game on the weekend, Manchester United versus Leicester. So what have they got? They've got exactly the same goal difference. But United do have a game in hand. So that's going to be a real humdinger of that final game of the season. And you'd have to say on current form that United would get up on that, because Leicester have just been horrible since the break.
Yeah, that's true. But but Man United weren't too flash this morning either. So down to the desperates there, mate. Down to the desperates there. Also on the local football scene, of course, the Phoenix were back in action in the A-League over the weekend, mate. An unfortunate loss to the top of the table, Sydney FC 3-1. No De Vea or Hooper for the first part of the game, and unfortunately no VAR either. I think we would have got a goal if there was. They still sit third, though. They're doing very well. They didn't play bad, actually. That was actually quite a good game. I'm really enjoying the A-League this year.
Yeah, it has stepped up a bit, hasn't it? This season, it seems to be a lot more flowing football. And, it's interesting, isn't it? All the people saying that VAR is a load of rubbish, and then suddenly when you don't have it, it certainly can make the difference, can't it? But, good.
Yeah, it's when you want it.
Phoenix, you're right. I thought they played quite well as two. And, there's a very good chance that they may meet Sydney again, and maybe, if not the second last game of the season, maybe the last game of the season in the grand. So that will be interesting.
Yeah, we won't fear them either, mate. We won't fear them. Every time we've played them, we've been in the game. So, look forward to that. Oh, also, in the football, there's so much going on in football, mate. The All Whites placed plans to return to the international football in October against the number one ranked side in the world, Belgium. Mate, we could be taking on De Bruyne and Hazard and co. I think that's on the 9th of February. So that is something to look forward to, mate.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the way that Chris Wood's been scoring goals for fun for Burnley in the Premier League, it should be a good game. And on even closer to home, mighty Mount Albert Ponsonby put 6 past Man United on Friday night. So they topped the table with 5 from 5. Great start to the season for Mount Albert Ponsonby. A 6-1 victory over Manurewa, who have a big, long history in the game of football in New Zealand, but they're not quite the club they were 30 years ago.
Also, you did mention Chris Wood there. He's taken his goal tally, I think, the 13 goals for the season, which is equal with the 75-76 record for Burnley's best ever return for a player in the English top flight. So he's done very well there. Also in La Liga, Real Madrid won the La Liga for the squillionth time, so we're really interested in that. And back to the local football, mate. Birkenhead United won. Auckland United won the Northern Regional Men's Premier League. Birkenhead United sitting third in that one. Auckland United still top of the table on 9 points. Central in second. And Birkenhead United just below those top two. So doing very well for a local football team. Love the mighty Burko.
Excellent, excellent. So let's talk about our wonderful wives and how they went over the Wives Fives. And,
I'm just getting those.
Yes, some interesting results over the weekend.
Okay, so the games, so the games we went for last week, mate, we went for the Hurricanes versus the Blues. That was one of the games. Of course, Charisse took a narrow lead after the first week, 2.5 to Michelle's 1.5 after the first week. Hurricanes versus the Blues. Who did Michelle have in that one?
Because we were at the game and the Hurricanes were at home, Michelle decided she'd go for the Hurricanes after the Blues had lost the previous week to the mighty Crusaders. A point for Michelle, picking the Hurricanes over the Blues.
Okay, Charisse chose the Blues because the Blues are looking better this year. Well, they were until until the week before and that week. So she's none for one. Michelle's picked up the point, so she's gone equal with Charisse on 2.5. Second game we had was Chiefs versus the Highlanders.
Well, again, Michelle went for the home team, and growing up in the Waikato region, she decided to go for the Chiefs. And for about 79 minutes, they were looking good for it. But
they were.
More about that when we cover the rugby. So yes, not a great result for Michelle, unfortunately.
Not a great result for Charisse either. She thought, I'm going to get a point. No, you didn't. That's the cruelty of sports, mate. You and I have felt that icy touch of the TAB very many times with a last-minute loss. So Charisse, none from 2. Michelle's got that 1 from 2. The third game was the Warriors, the hapless Warriors against the Sharks. Who did Michelle go for in this one?
She went for the mighty or unmighty Vodafone Warriors.
Oh, the poor girl. Charisse went for the Sharks. I can't believe it. She said, because it will be the Warriors, because of the Warriors versus the ref last week and the Sharks, yes, I'm bitter. Well, yeah, it had nothing to do with the ref. It had all to do with how bad the Warriors were. So she got a point there. I don't know how she got it, but she got a point there. So there you go. She moves into the lead, 3.5 to 2.5. We then got the Roosters versus the Raiders.
Well, Michelle, she decided to go for the Roosters because she thought she'd heard that they were having quite a good season, so decided to go for the boys from Bondi. But yeah, again, didn't quite work out.
Mate, crazy result that one. The Raiders just did the business in the last few minutes again, and Charisse also went for the Roosters. See, this is the thing: you bet on the favourites, you get burnt. She said because the Roosters are too good. She was wrong. The Raiders came home there. Final game was the AFL. We got the Richmond Tigers versus the North Melbourne Kangaroos. And who did Michelle go for in this one?
Well, following the lead of her husband, who's been a North Melbourne supporter now for close to 20 years, she decided to go for the Roos. But unfortunately, the Roos aren't having such a great season this year.
Nah, and I told the missus, look, you got to bet on the Richmond Tigers. The Tigers are the best. They won last year. They're a great team. I've always been a Tigers fan from way back in the day. She chose not to take my advice. She said, Aussie rules, haven't got a clue, but the game is big in Melbourne, and North Melbourne have Melbourne in the name. So she went for North Melbourne Kangaroos. She's no good. She's out of luck there. She got 1 out of 4, as did Michelle. So going into next week, I think it's 3.5 to 2.5.
Yes.
To Charisse. She'll be very happy about that. I think she thought she was down the toilet. Just going through the games next week, the games that I've picked for next week, we'll go through these later. Warriors versus Roosters, Eels versus Tigers. We've got the Wellington Phoenix versus Adelaide United, Crusaders versus the Hurricanes, and the Blues versus the Chiefs. That's for next week. So hopefully the ladies do a little bit better next week than their wives' fives.
Quite right. Well, moving on to our topics, we go ahead now to the Greyfriars Motel top 5, and you've picked this week's topic. So what have you got there, mate?
I have, mate. My top 5 this week: top 5 favourite tough men, but not in fight sports. Although sometimes there was a little bit of fighting involved, but not specifically fight sports. So who you got as your number 5 tough men in sports?
My number 5, I've gone for a footballer from a team that I'm not particularly fond of. And he started out at Nottingham Forest before moving on to Manchester United. I've gone for their holding midfielder, Roy Keane. Just ask Elfinger Haaland how tough Roy Keane is. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I saw a meme this morning after the FA Cup semi-final. It was a picture of Roy Keane standing in the car park, and the wording said, Roy Keane waiting for David De Gea in the car park. He's been a big critic of the Manchester United goalkeeper this season, and actually a big critic of Manchester United full stop. And with them getting knocked out of the FA Cup this morning, I'm sure that Keano will have some barbed words ready for the Spanish goalkeeper.
Oh, mate, loved Roy Keane. I wish he had played for Liverpool. He was just so combative. Those battles between him and Vieira in the midfield against Arsenal were just legendary. And some of them weren't even on the field. They were in the tunnel. The flying pizzas and everything. Absolutely loved Roy Keane. He was tough as old boots, and he still is. And my God, when he's got that beard, His beard rivals yours, by the way, when he grows that white beard. And those piercing eyes, he could scare anyone, mate. He was a scary man. He still is. Love Roy Keane. He was a tough man for sure.
Quite
Okay,
right.
my number five. I've gone to rugby, funnily enough. A lot of rugby and rugby league guys in my list. I've gone for Keith Murdoch. He was a farmer from Otago. Yeah, what a tough man he was. He weighed 110 kgs back in the days when no one weighed 110 kgs, mate. And he sported a chest, I don't know, 42-inch chest, massive chest. And of course, he sealed the victory for the All Blacks against Wales at Carter Palms Park in 1972 with a great try, 1916. And in the early hours of the next morning, the sounds of a scuffle broke out at the bowels of the Angel Hotel in Cardiff as a 6'4" security guard by the name of Peter Grant, a Welshman, said, "Hey, you can't be taking that out of the kitchen, son." And the next thing you know, he wakes up in hospital. Of course, Murdoch then takes the plane back to, never made it back to New Zealand, did he?
No, he got off in Australia and never came home.
That's right. Never came home. Sort of increased the legend of the man. And he was just an incredible guy. Lynn Colling, actually, when I was doing some research for this, had some great quotes on Keith Murdoch. He said, as a boy in a massively powerful 110 kilogram international props body, he recounted how he confided in him about his childhood. As a boy, he was significantly larger than his peers, but he lacked the ability to defend himself verbally against his tormentors. So he chose rather to fight back physically, which earned him the somewhat unjust reputation as a bully amongst his teachers. He was a scary man. He also looked very scary and one of the greatest moustaches ever in rugby. I love Keith Murdoch. He was a tough man, all right.
He certainly did have a great moustache. Yes, my number four, I've moved to the sport of cricket. I think one of the toughest competitors ever to turn out on a cricket field was the older of the War twins, tug of war. Steve Waugh is my number four, and the toughest guys in sport. Just an absolute battler, Steve Waugh, a tremendous competitor on and off the field. Gave the banter on the field, the sledging, the title of what was it? I can't remember now. It was a great name for sledging. But yeah, Steve Waugh, he's my number.
Mental disintegration, I think it was.
That's
mental disintegration.
Mental disintegration, yes. And the century he scored at the Sydney Cricket Ground in the final session of a game, I think it was against South Africa, when he came in just after tea and basically second to last ball of the day's play, smashed it to the boundary to bring up 100. That was one of the best hundreds I've ever seen. There were no wogs, no hoiks over mid-wicket. That was a pure cricket innings and some great shots all over the Sydney Cricket Ground. Steve Waugh is my number four.
Beautiful. Yeah, he was a tough man for sure. My number four, go to rugby league. Let's go to rugby league. One of the toughest guys I've ever seen play the sport. He was a highly athletic prop for South Sydney, Manly, New South Wales and Australia in the late 80s, early 90s. He used to throw himself into tackles like a Scud missile, and he was vicious with the fists as well in a game yet to be sanitised. Just ask Gary Jack. He was also a homosexual. Ian Roberts, what a tough guy this guy was, mate. He was just brutal. His father was his biggest role model. He used to openly criticise anything gay that he saw on TV. And Ian just held that inside him and made him rebel against his own sexuality on the field. His father always advised him to go for the biggest guy. And crippled by a life in denial, he could sublimate his rage and claw back his self-worth by excelling at everything physical, including fighting. And man, this guy could fight. He was actually taken to court by Gary Jack over an on-field brawl that occurred in 1991. And Jack said he was taking a stand against the beating he received from several Manly players, and he attempted to sue Ian Roberts for $100,000 in damages, alleging severe shock, traumatic injuries to his face, cuts, eyes, headaches, numbness, and all that sort of thing. I think he eventually settled out of court for $50,000, which was a lot of money back then. But he'll never call someone gay again if he's not quite sure. Ian Roberts, he was a tough man for sure. He was one of a kind. What a raging bull that man was.
He certainly was. And back in my radio days in Palmerston North, Ian Roberts was in town and came into the radio station for an interview. And the interview studios at News Talk ZB in Manawatu were not the biggest rooms. And with me on one side of the desk and the big radio desk in the middle, Ian Roberts managed to squeeze himself into a chair on the other side of the desk to do this interview, and boy, it was a really tight fit in that little studio. Very big man. The arms on the guy, the forearms and the biceps, just absolutely massive. And boy, I was certainly not going to ask him any difficult questions because he could from the desk to the other. So well behaved Ian that day. My number three, there's a lot of so-called tough guys in the sport of baseball, but this guy epitomised toughness and also longevity in his career. Pitched for over 20 seasons for 5 different clubs, mainly with the Houston Astros and the Texas Rangers in his home state of Texas, and that is the great Nolan Ryan. 5,700 strikeouts in the game of baseball across 21 seasons. Boy, he could get involved in fights too. One particular one, Robin Ventura of the Chicago White Sox, didn't like a pitch being thrown behind his head, so charged the mound. But boy, the rest of the game, Nolan Ryan decided he wasn't going to change his shirt after that because it had Robin Ventura's blood all over it, and there was no way he was going to change that shirt. He pitched the rest of the game, a complete game too. Surprise! I mean, nowadays he would have been thrown out for fighting, but back in the early '80s, they didn't get thrown out for fighting. And I believe me, an umpire that had the balls big enough to throw Nolan Ryan out of a game. Ooh, good luck to him. He was a real tough guy and a great pitcher as well. In later years, he became involved with both Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros in an administration role. And for the Texas Rangers, at age 62, he threw out the ceremonial first pitch and still reached 90 miles an hour at age 62.
No way.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yep. There was no way he was just going to lob it to the catcher. He was wound up and threw it. Yeah, 92 miles an hour for a 62-year-old man at that stage. So
that's crazy.
Pretty impressive. Crazy. He was still throwing close to 100 miles an hour before he retired at age, I think he was 40 when he finally gave it away, or 41.
And pitching has to be one of the toughest sports in the world. If you don't know a lot about baseball, I mean, I don't know anything compared to you, but I do know that pitchers basically you have to be on like a 3 or 4 day rotation. And as far as the punishment that those guys put their body through, especially like the arm, the shoulder, it's a motion that should not be done. It's a bit like bowling and cricket,
like
isn't
cricket
it?
Bowling, yeah.
You're putting your body through so many stresses, and to just have a career that lasted over 20 years doing that sort of thing every 3 or 4 days, yeah, he must have been a hell of a player, mate. My number 3, I'm going to stick with the sports I know, mate. I'm going to stick with the sport of rugby league. A Wellington representative and New Zealand international. I love this guy, mate. He was tough as you come. Kevin Tamati. He played 52 times for Wellington and the Kiwis from 1979 to 85. And he took on the Australian forward pack almost single-handedly during that time. And it seemed like he didn't care. Seemed like he didn't mind. I'll take on five of you guys, 6 of you guys, 7 of you guys. Took on the whole team. It just seemed to make him more happy. He loved violence. I absolutely loved him for it. And he's perhaps best known for that fight with Greg Dowling during that test match in 1983. They both got sent off by the French referee, Julien Rascaneres. And he sent them off at the same time. Probably not the right thing to do, because as they walked away, the Aussie guy tried to tap him on the shoulder, didn't he, Greg Dowling, and said, "Hey, mate, I just want to have a word with you." Kevin said, "No, mate, no, just leave me alone." And the guy wouldn't stop tapping the shoulder. He sure paid the price for that. All televised, bloody and brutal battle against the sideline there at Lang Park. He gave him a good taste of Kiwi. Kevin Tamati. He's my number 3. Loved him. Love Kevin Tamati.
Excellent. Yes. Oh, who could forget that fight with Dowling? That was television gold. That one in the days when it was a bit more acceptable back then. Not quite so now. You wouldn't you'd get away with a big ban these days.
Absolutely.
Moving on to
Absolutely.
my number two. This guy, famous for grabbing Paul Gascoigne's nuts and coming out with a saying before the 1988 FA Cup final against Liverpool that he was going to bite Ian Rush's head off and spit in the hole. Vinnie Jones is my number two on the tough guys in sport. And, in latter years, he's turning out on the silver screen now as an actor, and he's not actually doing too bad a job. His first couple of movies,
okay.
a bit concrete-ish, but who can forget the final line of the movie Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels? Vinnie Jones delivers it in absolute style. It's been emotional.
It's been emotional.
So Vinnie Jones, former Wimbledon, Leeds, Chelsea midfielder, amongst many other clubs that he played for over his time. Saw a documentary on him a couple of years back on the Premier League World Show, and he certainly had a tough life. His wife died at a very young age from cancer, and he's given a lot of his time now to cancer research and raising funds and money for that. But now based in America, of course, in Hollywood. He still turns out in the odd movies every now and then. But yeah, Vinnie Jones, my number two, tough guy.
Love them. Crazy Gang. The Crazy Gang. The Wimbledon Crazy Gang. Love those guys. Okay, my number two, mate. My number two, one of the most feared men to have ever worn the fabled black jersey for the All Blacks, mate. During the infamous Battle of Nantes in 1986, extraordinary circumstances that led him leaving the field with concussion, 3 missing teeth, a torn scrotum that required 18 stitches, and he still came back on the field and still played on. Wayne Buck Shelford, mate. Intimidating and scary sight coming off the back of an All Black scrum as there ever was. He wasn't afraid to have a scrap, but he always said that he didn't really like fighting. He said, I don't admire thugs. It's not part of the game. I played tough rugby. I wasn't scared of being hurt, but I wasn't a fighter. I hated fighting. I still hate it today. I just don't like it. It's not part of the game. But one of his most high-profile incidents involved him doing just that when Hugh Richards came around the side with a bit of a scuffle on the thing, and Buck just laid him flat, didn't he? Knocked him out, one punch, bang, Ballymore lying on his back. And, of course, because it was back in the day, the referee sent the guy off who had been knocked out rather than the guy who was dishing it out to him, because Hugh was, he was the guy that instigated the thing. So nothing like a bit of retaliation, and Buck sure knew how to do that. And Buck Shelford, what a legend, mate. That time in Nantes when he had his scrotum ripped apart. Just every kick. You looked a little bit like that, yeah. Every self-serving Kiwi sports aficionado knows that story, and it just elevated him to levels of toughness that no one else will ever surpass. Maybe one person will, because he's my number two, Buck Shelford. Love him.
Yes, well, you've stolen me thunder there, Mahona. He is my number one tough guy in sport. And the reason that Hugh Richards did get sent off was you can't go around headbutting people's fists. So yeah, I can't add any more than what you've said. Wayne Buck Shelford, ferocious on the field, ferocious leading that All Black haka, and he was really the person that started to get the All Blacks to take the haka seriously, and everybody did it properly under Buck, and that tradition is carried on to this day. Prior to then, yes, the All Blacks did do the haka, but it was a bit messy, with players not really sure what they were doing. And he was the first one to introduce proper haka training. And very proud Māori gentleman, Wayne Buck Shelford. And yes, absolutely the toughest guy in world sport, for my mind.
Yeah. No, he definitely was, mate. He was up there. He's definitely in the top two, because I've got another number one. Of course, I have to go to my favourite sport. I have to go to the sport of rugby league. And this guy, another captain around the same time Buck was captaining, he was so tough, mate. Never questioned how tough this guy was. It wasn't his fists really that did it. It was the amount of injuries this guy played through. So many injuries, so much pain that elevated him to legendary tough man status. Of course, I'm talking about Mark Graham. He started with Otahu before a premiership winning stint under Graham Lowe at North in Brisbane. And then he went on to play 145 times for the North Sydney Bears and finished his career at Wakefield Trinity in England. Very interesting story. When he first started playing in the Brisbane Rugby League Premiership for the Norths Club, he helped his side to a victory in the grand final that year against Wally Lewis's winner Manly. And he actually broke Wally Lewis's jaw and crushed his esophagus in a tackle that Wally Lewis said was the hardest hit he ever experienced on the rugby league field. So if Wally Lewis says it's the hardest hit that he ever took, that's good enough for me, mate. In his book, Modern Rugby League Greats, the game's chief New Zealand historian John Coffey described Graham as Captain Marvel and the $6 million man wrapped into one. And around this time, the Auckland newspaper, the Auckland Star, did a picture of Mark Graham in just his underwear, and it pointed to all the places that had injuries, and he looked like a proverbial pincushion. There was just injuries all over him, and he just never missed a game either. He just never missed a game. He was just so durable, and for that reason, Mark Graham, he's my number one tough guy in sports.
Very good. Yes, a fine choice at number one there, and deserves to be right up there alongside Wayne Buck Shelford. I've got a few honourable mentions here. I'll start with some rugby league players. The bulk of the Balmain Tigers pack in the late 80s, Paul Sirenen and Steve Blocker-Roach in there.
Love those.
I did also have Sam Burgess amongst honourable mentions. Played the bulk of our grand final with a broken eye socket. It's pretty tough for you. On the rugby side of things, I also had Keith Murdoch, and you can't talk about tough rugby players without mentioning the great Pine Tree Colin Meads. He was a big, tough man himself and had many a tough outing on the rugby field. From the football scene, Graham Souness was a tough, hard tackling midfielder for Liverpool. You can't go past Stephen Gerrard also. He played through many injuries in his career and was also the man responsible for getting Liverpool back into that 2005 Champions League final. Terry Butcher, he played centre-back for England for many, many years, also Ipswich Town and Rangers in Scotland. And who can forget the sight of Terry Butcher with his head swathed in bandages after opening up a cut early on in an England international game. And also from football, I've got former Manchester City goalkeeper and a former German POW by the name of Bert Trautmann, who played the bulk of the 1950-something FA Cup final with a broken neck. Broke his neck midway through the first half in the game, carried on and played the rest of the game. I think it was 1956 FA Cup final. Bert Trautmann.
Unbelievable.
Great movie on him on Sky recently. It was just called The Keeper. And it was about his story about going from a German POW and one of the local football team manager saw him playing in goal in a POW camp game and thought, this guy looks good. Bought him out, and he eventually got a trial for Manchester City and stayed in England. And played for 11 or 12 years.
Wow, great story.
Yeah, played, as I say, an hour of an FA Cup final with a broken neck, so that's pretty tough.
But that was back when you were just a little boy, though, in the 50s. So yeah, I don't really remember that one. Got a couple of honourable mentions myself, mate. Isaac Vivian Alexander Richards, can't go past him. Just the way he used to walk out to bat. Viv Richards, of course, loved him. He could have been a boxer. When I mentioned Arthur Beetson in the rugby league as well, Big Artie. Oh my gosh, that guy was as tough as old teak. Kevin Skinner, the 1956, the 1956 prop for the All Blacks when we lost the first test of the Springboks, and he came on. They brought him back, and of course he was the heavyweight boxing champion for New Zealand at that stage. They had two tough Afrikaners props. He started on the blind side, sorted him out, moved to the open side, sorted him out. That's how tough Kevin Skinner was. Took on the whole
really was.
front row by himself. I had Colin Meads as well, mate. Tough as probably the toughest man to ever don the All Black jersey. Loved Colin Meads. There was that old story about him when that guy said, no, you just turn around the 99 call in the Lions. The guy that had Colin Meads, you just turn around and thump the guy next to you. Everyone did that. Colin was still standing there. He was like, what? He said, I hit him as hard as I could and he didn't move. I also had Sean Fitzpatrick. He was as durable as they come. Richie McCaw, of course, for his durability as well. Going back to rugby league again, Brendan Tutor. Maybe if I had a bit,
assassin.
Absolutely. Maybe if I had our dirtiest players ever, he would have been right up the top. Kurt Sorensen. Used to love Kurt Sorensen. He was a tough man. Gordon Tallis, of course. I had Graham Souness. Mark Cowboy Shaw. Don't go running around my side of the scrum, mate.
Yes.
Tommy Radonicus. Back in Tommy Radonicus.
Oh, Tommy.
And I also had Mark Carroll and Paul Harrigan, just for the pure hatred of each other and the way they used to biff each other in the rugby league. Used to love seeing those guys take each other on as well. So many tough guys in the world of sport, mate. That was a good category. Liked it.
It certainly was. And we'll be back next week with another Greyfriars Motel top 5. Moving on to cricket, the England cricket team are doing a bit better in the second test against the West Indies at Old Trafford in Manchester. On day one, England batted first, 469 for 9 declared. Dominic Sibley, the opening batsman, 120. Ben Stokes really got going with the bat, 176. And Joe Root back in that game, he got 23. So a good first day. Roston Chase with the ball, 5 for 172. In reply, the West Indies all out for 287. Not such a good started off well with Brathwaite 75 and Brooks down the order with 68 and Chase backing up his bowling with 51 with the bat. Currently in the second innings, England 37 for 2 with trying to get quick runs, opened with Ben Stokes and Joss Butler, but that didn't last long. So Crawley and Root at the wicket now on 37 for 2, leading by 219 runs. And that is after 4 days of that test. So 1 day to go. And, England needing quick runs to add to that lead of 219. So a bit better than
that Ben Stokes.
Sorry?
That Ben Stokes can play a little bit, can't he, Macca?
Yeah, he's not too bad. Good Christchurch boy.
He is. His father, actually, Gerard Stokes, coached the Canterbury Rams rugby league team.
Yes.
Should have kept him over here, mate. Should have kept him over here. He would have been bloody handy in the Black Caps middle order, wouldn't he?
He certainly would have. So, good. A good 4 days so far for England. And I think if they can add another probably 70 or 80 quick runs, set a target of around 300, they could be on for a win there at Old Trafford, but West Indies are going to have to bat well on the final day to save that test.
It's just strange without the crowds, though. I don't know. Cricket's one of those sports. I mean, with the football and the fake crowd, they're always making noise. But when you've got people seated there for 6 to 7 hours, just a ripple of applause. You don't always need a lot of spectators there, just a ripple of applause. But when you can hear the crack on the bat and the ball go, you see the ball go flying and just no sound at all. It's just strange, isn't it?
It is. And yesterday I watched a bit of. They've got baseballers starts again at the end.
I saw that. Yeah,
they've got a few exhibition games, and yesterday the Yankees played the Mets, and they're playing again today at Citi Field with no crowd, and that was,
weird.
That was really weird. And the Yankees commentators were commentating from Yankee Stadium. Because of the whole COVID situation, so they were commentating from a TV screen at Yankee Stadium, while the Mets commentators were doing it from Citi Field, and it'll be vice versa today with the game at Yankee Stadium, and the Mets commentators will be commentating from Citi Field. So quite bizarre.
Weird.
But,
weird.
Again, the crack of the bat with the ball, just so audible without a crowd in the stand. So, yeah, the season kicks off Friday New Zealand time with two really, really good games. The Yankees are playing at Washington Nationals in the nation's capital. That's the first game, and that's followed straight after by the Los Angeles Dodgers against San Francisco Giants. So a good double header.
Okay, so you're the baseball expert, mate. Before the season starts, I want you to pick me the World Series.
World Series, well, short season. It
I
could
know,
be,
it's hard.
I mean, if it was a full season, I'd probably plug for the Yankees. They strengthened their side with the addition of Garrett Cole, the star hurler from the Houston Astros over the last couple of years. And the Astros are going to be strong, so I think it's going to come down to a shootout between the Astros and the Yankees for the American League. National League, you'd have to back the Dodgers at the moment. They've just got a sterling pitching lineup, and they've added probably the second best player in baseball in Mookie Betts from the Boston Red Sox. They've added him to the Dodgers outfield this.
Oh no! Did he go to the Dodgers? Why did he go to the Dodgers?
I know. It gives me no pleasure doing that, being an Arizona Diamondbacks fan as well. They're the biggest rivals. And I just don't really think there's any other side. Perhaps maybe the Cardinals, if they can get it right. The Cubs, if they can get it right too. I don't really think anybody from the East is going to trouble the Dodgers. Maybe the Mets and the Nationals could.
All right. Well, let's revisit this every couple of weeks. You're allowed to change your mind. It's a moving field, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of I mean, who knows? I mean, like you say, shortened season, sort of toss of a coin. I mean, the roster's important, but really, probably more important is just get on a roll.
Well, that's the big thing: is get a good start is very important.
Yeah.
If you're 3-7 after 10 games, you can probably kiss goodbye to the postseason, let alone making the World Series. So a good start is very important. Those first 10 games could go a long way to decide, because, as you say, once teams get on a roll, it's very hard to stop them. And with the 60 games being played over 2 months and a week, there's only a couple of days off a month for these players. So you've got to stay fit and stay. And you could see players that, with niggles, will play on because it's only a short season. Whereas when you've got the full 162 game season, if you get injured in game 30, you can rehabilitate and get back around sort of game 80, 90, 100. But that you haven't got that luxury in a shortened season.
Yeah.
So, it's all on, as I say, the end of this week. And hopefully we can see some good baseball.
All right, let's move to the NRL, mate. Will the Walker brothers be the new coaches of the Warriors? That's the talk. The twin brothers currently coaching the Ipswich Jets in the Brisbane comp. I'll tell you what, the Warriors need a bloody coach because they got smashed in the weekend. Not a great result for the Warriors. We lost, of course, to those pesky Sharks, 46-10. The other results, the Roosters lost 20-24 to the Raiders. The Raiders losing all their players. Ricky Stewart knows how to fire them up, though, mate. They came out and they played bloody well. Storm thrashed the Titans. The Titans aren't looking much better than the Warriors, 42-6. West Tigers, they thrashed the poor old Broncos. That's the only place worse to be than New Zealand if you're a rugby league fan, is Queensland. 48-0. The Dragons beat the Bulldogs. That was a big result. Poor old Dogs can't buy one at the moment. 28-22. Rabbits lost to the Knights, 18-20. The Seagulls had a good win against the Eels, who were top of the table up until then, 22-18. And the Warriors lost to the Sharks, and the Cowboys 22. The Panthers 22. The Cowboys 10. The ladder's looking very interesting now. The Panthers are on top with 17. The Eels in second place with 16 with the Storm. And then you've got Knights, Roosters, Raiders, Tigers, and Bunnies. They're Bunnies and Tigers on 10. Warriors still sit 13th, but now they're 4 points out of the 8. Bottom 5, Cowboys, Warriors, Broncos, Titans, Bulldogs. They look like their own mini league, really. Unfortunately, the Bulldogs only 2 points. So maybe They're the ones for the wooden spoon. But yeah, it looks like there's sort of 3 leagues developing in the NRL. Local league, great win for the North Coast Tigers in the Auckland Fox Memorial against the Otahu Leopards. They're sitting where they deserve to be, right at the top of the Auckland Fox Memorial at the moment, mate. Ex-Warrior Kevin Locke playing a starring role in that one for the mighty North Coast Tigers. There you go.
Very good.
That's my wrap-up of the league.
Excellent. Well, Michelle and I headed down to Wellington over the weekend, crossed the Rimutaka Hill, and went to the Sky Stadium on the weekend, better known as the Cake Tin, obviously. And, what a great game of rugby that Hurricanes Blues game was. The lead going backwards and forwards. Ngani Laumapi really stepped up his game after being criticised during the week and really showed some form, which could see him back in the All Blacks frame towards the end of the year. Just a tremendous game, as I said. Early penalty inside a minute to the Blues, and some Hurricanes fans probably thought, oh, here we go again. But then just 3 minutes later, Ngani Laumapi made Beauden Barrett look like a slow prop forward, just running right around him and stood him up. And boy, the crowd gave Beauden Barrett heaps on Saturday night. I was a little disappointed. The amount of booing, I thought, a bit of booing, when he first got the ball maybe, and then it'll die away. But right throughout the game, every time Barrett got the ball or was kicking a goal, the Hurricanes crowd really gave him what for, which...
Yeah, I blame the National Party and Judith Collins for that. Yeah,
probably
just,
to be expected.
Just hateful.
Too much hate in the crowd.
Yeah, exactly.
And but as we mentioned before, the Hurricanes got up with a try towards the end, and Geordie Barrett slotted the winning conversion after older brother Beauden had missed one not too much longer before, 29-27. And boy, what a game yesterday. The Highlanders getting up over the Chiefs in the 80th minute of the game.
Couldn't believe it, mate.
Absolute finish. 33-31. The Chiefs had led 31-7 early in the second half, and just seemed to go into cruise mode, which was disappointing. I mean, when you look through their side, they've got some great players right from front to back. Nepo Laulala had a storming game at prop. The boy Slater, the hooker, the son of Andy Slater, the former Hurricanes great, and nephew of another Hurricanes great, Gordon Slater. The two Slater boys who in the early days of Super Rugby would finish the game, get in the car back to Taranaki to do the milking the next morning.
That's right.
It's a great old story. I'm sure probably Kevin Smiley Barrett was in the car as well, going back to his farm. But the Chiefs, as I say, Laulala, great loose forward. Lachlan Boshia had a hell of a game in the loose on the blind side. Sam Cane was his usual self with Soakola at the back. And what a talented backline they've got as well. Right from Brad Weber at halfback right through to Damian McKenzie at fullback, who seems to be starting to get back to his best for the Chiefs. But disappointing. Many people were picking the Chiefs to win this competition, and they're now 0-5. So just a quick look at the table. The Crusaders, they had the bye, of course, this weekend, and they're leading the way on 18 points. The Blues are on 13. Hurricanes on 12, so that's going to be a tight battle for second and third. Hurricanes playing the Crusaders this week, so that should be another storming game. And the Highlanders on 10 points, and then the Chiefs, they've picked up just the 4 bonus points throughout the season, which just shows how close they've been. And
absolutely.
Of course, Warren Gatland had said before the game, if they can get a quick start, that's all they've been really missing in their games. Well, they got the quick start. It was just a bit of a split. So I'm sure Gats was pretty upset after that game. Across the Tasman, we had the Reds had a good win over the Western Force on Friday night, 31-24. And the Reds actually played some nice rugby. And another close one in Saturday's game with the Brumbies getting up over the Waratahs, just 24 points to 23. So that was a close one there. The Reds lead the table with 10 points from 3 games. Brumbies are second. They haven't lost yet. They've had 2 wins there on 9 points, with the Waratahs on 6 and the Rebels and the Force with just some bonus points each. So a good weekend of rugby, and good to see a good crowd at the Sky Stadium on Saturday night for that Hurricanes Blues game. And as I said, a really good game, and the crowd really got going after you'd slated the crowd at the stadium the previous week for being hardly even noticed they were there. But boy, you could notice the crowd on Saturday night. It was certainly
yeah.
loud. They obviously saw the podcast last week.
They must have been listening, mate. They must have been listening, and I don't think they're the only ones that have been listening too, mate. I think the NZRFU hierarchy might have been listening too, mate, because what the new Super Rugby format information came out this week, and basically it's verbatim, exactly what you said last week to me. Exactly what you said. Now, I hope you're on the pull for this one. I hope you're getting some sort of kickback, mate, because, you're right on the money, weren't you? Basically, we're going to get a team from the Pacific, a couple of, 4 sides from Australia, 4 or 5 sides from Australia. Yeah. One round robin format, have a table we can all understand. I mean, this is all rocket appliances, mate. I just don't get it. Don't understand. No, honestly, yeah, it was some good news. It was some good news. It's about time. We've been saying it for way too long. Get rid of the conference system. We don't need it. Just keep it nice and simple. So hopefully, going forward, the Super Rugby will be in that format. I'll absolutely love it if it is. And also, the North-South match. They're talking about the North-South match. It's only going to be one match, though. I don't know, man. I would have thought 3 matches would have been perfect, especially this year. Maybe next year and the year after, maybe when we've got international rugby back, maybe 1 game a year. But in this year of all years, when we're struggling, with international rugby, why couldn't they just made it a 3-match series? Maybe 1 in the North Island, 1 in the South Island, 1 in the Stewart Island. I don't know. But yeah, I would have much preferred a 3-match series. It would have enabled us to get our parochialism on, all that sort of thing. And if it had been 1-1 at the end, it would have created a great final. Yeah, I just don't know about that. And also in the current Super Rugby thing, we're not going to have a final for this either, are we?
No, it's just straight round robin. So pretty much
they've
got it sewn up already.
They've won it.
Yeah,
they have. See, so why don't we have a final for this either? I mean, that would have just been one final game at the end of the thing. I don't know. They're so keen to do the no ties. They're bringing in the American style thing. The Americans always have a final. I just don't understand. We need a final. So
I think with the North-South just being the one game, they're conscious of not encroaching too much on to the NPC because that starts a couple of weeks after the North-South game. So I think they just want to see those players back in their provinces, get a bit of promotion going for the provincial game, and try and get some crowds back at those games. Of course, the crowds at the NPC have been pretty poor over the last few years, basically because the competition's been diluted. So I think the rugby union are pretty keen, especially in the early weeks of that NPC, to get the All Blacks back playing for their provinces before this mooted Sanzar tournament that is possibly going to be happening in New Zealand in October, November. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you are the NZRFU spokesperson, so I think you would be across that.
Yes, quite right. So I think that's what's happening. So we'll wait and see.
Cool.
So
awesome.
We've come to that time.
Okay. We have. I better finish with a little bit of a sporting sermon or a sporting soliloquy, whatever you want to talk about. This week, mate, Manchester City. European ban. They've been celebrating that it's been lifted and all that sort of thing. They've been going on. Stop celebrating, Manchester City. Stop celebrating. Of course, they've been suspended. There had been mooted that they were going to be suspended for 2 years from European competition, and they were going to miss 2 years of Champions League competition. And they appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, better known as CAS. And on Monday, their ban was lifted. They called it a huge victory for the club. And they have to pay a fine of 10 million euros, which is a lot of money for you and me, but not much to Manchester City. Now, it was regarded and described as vindication by them. Manager Pep Guardiola saying that the ruling proved that the club have acted above board and it was a good day for football. I don't think they should be crowing about this, mate. CAS came to their conclusion because of a lack of evidence and also because of a lack of time frame, and also because Manchester City's refusal to cooperate with their investigation, how could it be a good day for football? It's a setback for UEFA. I recommend they stop celebrating. If you read the reasoning of the judgment, you can see that its evidence was not valid enough. In fact, celebration should be forbidden altogether. The president and long-standing Man City critic, Javier Tebas, from La Liga, he's the La Liga president, he said Manchester City will be in the Champions League next season, not because they have acted correctly, but rather because CAS is wrong. In fact, CAS has fined them 10 million euros, not just for the sake of it, but from what I've read, I gather it's because they didn't cooperate with them. Why is that? Have they hidden documentation? The day I sit down and read it, I will tell Guardiola that of which I am convinced Manchester City have not acted right. Now, even Mourinho has come out and said it's a disgraceful decision. He said, because if Man City are not guilty, I think to be punished with millions is a disgrace. If you're not guilty, you are not punished. If they are guilty, they should be banned. In any case, the decision is a disaster. If you are not guilty, you should not pay. I am not saying Man City is not guilty. I know money is easy for them, but it's a principle. Even a pound. Why are you paying 8-9 million? It's a disgrace. Now, for once, I'm with the power brokers, managers, and UEFA on this one. Manchester City were fined 10 million euros for their part in a deception and their subsequent cover-up of doing wrong. And yet they are now trying to take the moral high ground and saying that what happened is outside the dates of the panel's framework and that they're happy and they're going to celebrate it. None of those irregularities may have ever been discovered if it wasn't for a hacker. Such were the levels of the cover-up. Surely, just like when an athlete misses a drugs test or is covering something up, they are presumed guilty and face the same punishment as if they were. Manchester City's attempt to cover up the financial improprieties should have been treated in exactly the same way. Instead, it's a slap with a wet bus ticket. A European ban is the only type of punishment that would have been appropriate and effective at curtailing that type of behaviour now and in the future. Now, it's effectively a money grab where those with the biggest checkbooks ultimately win on the field and off the field. A very sad day for football it was, mate.
Certainly was.
That's all I've got to say on the matter. Yeah,
yep,
really
no,
sad.
you're exactly right. I can't believe the lengths that Man City and their fans have celebrated this victory. It's not a victory. You still got fined 10 million. So people who have done nothing wrong don't get fined 10 million euro. It's just a complete farce, and it's just UEFA, maybe they need going through and
tighten up their legislation, I guess. But
yeah.
Look, there's other ways they could do this, aren't there? There are things like salary caps and all that sort of thing. But what they've tried to do in the world of football is leave it open to the market. And this is what happens when you leave anything like this open to the market. It enables very, very, very wealthy people to come along and play the game in a different sphere, really, don't they? You look at what Liverpool's done. It's not impossible. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've spent a net amount of about between 20 and 50 million pounds on players because we've sold. And whereas you look at Manchester City, they've probably 6, 7, 10 times what we've spent, but we're still competing with them.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's only because we've got a bloody brilliant manager. But money, money is it just makes the world go round, especially in football. And it's just sad that they can pay their way out. It's just not right.
Absolutely. Anyway, enough of that. Yeah. It's another edition of the Hot Air Sports Podcast, and we'll hope to see you next week. And it's good afternoon from me.
And it's good night from him. Good night.